Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, happy Tuesday to you. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. It's the week before Michigan week, which is the second most wonderful week of the year.
It is. It is a great week because it is so close to Michigan week. But before we can get to Michigan, and it's just been this way the last 3 weeks, you got Maryland, you got Rutgers, you got Penn State. You have to deal with all of this East Coast stuff, all of the stuff that is just kind of in the way before the important games, before the rivalry stuff. But it is Penn State week, and in the last few years, the Penn State game has been pretty entertaining, if not entirely stressful for most of the participants, so that's something.
That's something. If you miss the wonderful, tight feeling in your chest that you normally got during the Jim Tressel era, it may return at times this Saturday.
Yeah, and it has been fun the last few years, just being on the sideline watching crazy stuff happen in these games and actually like recording history as it has gone on and see all these comebacks. And it's been a fun series to be a part of. Not that we are a part of it, but we have helped shape it in some way.
In a pretty direct way, I would say. I remember 2 years ago being on the field at the end of the comeback win at Ohio State, and it was just, the vibe in the stadium was just kind of like, it was real intense and weird. Like, there were a couple real bad calls that went against Ohio State, and they had fallen way behind, and the crowd was real surly. And then it was like, by the end, it just seemed like this was this really like, yeah, screw you. Like it was like happy anger. And I remember turning to you and going like, this is a weird vibe in here right now. Like a real weird vibe.
Like when you're in the wrong kind of bar and things could just get ugly real quick. Like you've gone to a biker bar and you thought you were just going to a regular bar. And then you show up with like, I don't know, stuff that bikers don't like. And then you order like a wine spritzer.
A drink with an umbrella in
it.
Yes.
And they're like, well, you do not belong here. And then, yes, this has happened to both of us many, many times, I'm sure.
This weekend's big showdown at the Double Deuce on the Olentangy. Pain don't hurt. It's Ohio State, Penn State week.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. It's always a fun time. Tuesday is always Ryan Day. We talked to Jeff Hafley today as well. Justin Fields, Brandon Bowen, and BB Landers.
3 of our absolute favorites.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with any of those guys. And Ryan Day, the message of the day, Tom, was talent being equated. And you can play all of these games against Maryland and Rutgers and know you're better than them. But what happens when you play a team where talent is equated and they have as much talent as you do and they are as good as you are? Then it comes down to your technique, your preparation, your execution, and your toughness. I don't know exactly how equated the Ohio State and Penn State talent is, though. And I think what this is maybe it's the most it has been equated this season. So therefore, the Buckeyes need to be ready for it, obviously. I still think the talent sides with Ohio State this week.
Yeah, this is the old Animal Farm. Some animals are more, everyone's equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Penn State's more equal than the others. Other teams that Ohio State have played this year in terms of overall talent. I mean, you look at the concept of the blue chip ratio, where you have to have basically 50% of your recruits have to be 4 or 5 star recruits in order to be a legitimate national championship contender. Wisconsin is a team that falls, I'm pretty sure, below that line. Penn State's one of the teams that falls above that line. Now, Penn State, I haven't looked at these numbers in months, but I think that Penn State was, in the 55% or 60% kind of range, which is right about where Michigan is. Like, yep, you're over the line. Ohio State's like 75% or 80% or something like that. I mean, Ohio State is, there's above the line and then there's above the line. And Ohio State is still above the line in an area where, only the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Clemson is like getting there, but not quite to that level yet with Ohio State, just by that one metric.
And so then this game especially will be about toughness. This is Ohio State's, you look at the game against Wisconsin, the game against Michigan State, both of those two teams were they may have been at the top of the Big Ten rush defense list at that time. This week it is Penn State, who is number 1 against the rush in the Big Ten. I'm not sure where they are nationally, probably top 5, giving up 75.9 yards rushing per game. And you look at Ohio State, who is leading the Big Ten in rushing and is probably the top non-triple option rush offense in the nation. I think the toughness aspect is what won the game for Ohio State against Wisconsin with the rain, where Ryan Day told his team the tougher team is going to win. These are our conditions. We thrive in this rain. They may see some rain again this week against Penn State. But that toughness message has worked in the past. I expect it to be reiterated this week. And when the talent equates, the tougher team, the better prepared, all of that. But especially toughness this week, running against a defense that does not give up yards.
Right. This is a toughness game for sure. But I mean, like you said earlier, it's a technique game. Like, you can't just go out there a million miles an hour and just go, we're going to out-tough them. And because that doesn't work. I mean, Robert Landers talked about how everything looks great from the outside. But when you look at it inside, like from the inside, the word he used was awful as far as like how they have looked on defense at times. And that's a thing that's going to help probably keep focus this week. But, you know, some of the examples he gave were, you know, that you just, guys being in the wrong gap, guys missing assignments. That's all stuff you can kind of get away with against some of your lesser opponents. Because, you know, maybe a guy who doesn't have real tight coverage has that makeup speed that he can make that speed up against, you know, a lesser wide receiver.
Yes.
Against KJ Hamler, if
Right.
KJ Hamler plays this weekend, you don't have that luxury.
The Robert Landers talking about these missed assignments and these missing the gaps and being in the wrong gaps, it sounded like he was talking about last year's defense, and you're thinking like, I don't see those. But then again, you know, you saw the Rutgers, they had a couple of long plays, and there's been some moments here and there, but there are just more guys around to make plays, to stop the big plays now, and that's because that's the focus of the defense. It's Jeff Hafley's like purpose of living is to limit big plays, and so you add a couple more defenders in certain spots to keep that from happening. But yeah, and this has been Ryan Day's message as well. We can get so much better. If you guys saw the tape, you'd see the little things, and it is the little things that's your technique, that's the execution, and it's the little things that separate you when you're supposed to be playing against a team that is as good as you. The Buckeyes will be better this week, Tom, than they were last week because of the return of defensive end Chase Young.
Who?
Chase Young. He's from Maryland. He was a little known recruit, only 5 stars. Has not yet. He doesn't even hold like a single career sack record at Ohio State or a single season sack record at Ohio State. So he's flown under the radar.
How many tackles and sacks did he have, say, the last couple weeks?
That's the thing. None. So you can understand why people...
Good? You think he's good? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, you have to figure Maryland and Rutgers have very good offensive lines. I think. But they'll get him back this week. They'll see how it goes. I think Robert Landers said the way the defensive line stepped up in Chase Young's absence was... Obviously, it was important, but he loved the way, just seeing it happen, and everybody stepped up. It was an entire team room that did it, the defensive line room. And I was thinking, I saw with Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Tyler Friday getting the starts this past week. That's now 7 guys who have started at defensive end for the Buckeyes this season, which is something that you would not have thought would be necessary given the fact that you were returning both Chase Young and Jonathan Cooper. I don't know if we'll get Jonathan Cooper back this week. Ryan Day said he had a question. Somebody asked him, about Austin Mack and Jonathan Cooper and this, and he's like, yeah, I think we'll get some of those guys back this week. We were overly cautious last week, not naming any names.
Well, Damon Arnett is one of the overly cautious names,
yes,
for
he
sure.
will for sure be back. But getting Chase Young back this week, Jeff Hafley was excited about it. Ryan Day's excited about it. Nobody's more excited about it than Chase Young.
Yeah, Chase Young, it sounds like has just been he's been doing what he can to keep things moving on, help the younger guys who are going to fill into his place. But, I don't think there's much question that he was really would have liked to have been out there the last couple of weeks because, this is not his senior day, but there's a pretty good chance this is the last time he gets to play in the horseshoe. So I'm sure he was not looking to punt 2 weeks of his final season at Ohio State.
No, especially down a stretch like that, and against a home state school as well. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he gets back in there. I think Ryan Day was asked if there would be any rust, and Day's like, no.
No, I think Chase Young has probably been staying in shape. And remember last week when Chris Chuganoff talked about sitting on the beach for 2 months and just being way out of football shape. I'm going to guess Chase Young has not spent the last couple of weeks sitting on a beach and getting out of shape.
And if he had been working with the scout team, he probably would have been the greatest scout team defensive end of all time. But you don't want the greatest scout team defensive end of all time because then your quarterbacks and your offensive line don't actually get the reps that they need.
No.
I don't know what else Ryan Day talked about this week. I mean, I do know because I was there.
I said we were just there.
But, just scrolling through, he did have some words for the fans, which we could probably also write up as one of the stories this week where, the fans have an impact in this game. And we just talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere and in the shoe 2 years ago was different. And every time you go to Penn State, that's a crazy atmosphere as well. And the players will talk about it. It's the loudest game they play in. It's the most fun. It's this, it's that. And this is an opportunity for Ohio State fans to have an impact on the game for possibly all 4 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Day was imploring that they get there early and that they are loud and as loud as they can. We need them to be as loud as they can every time Penn State has the ball. That's third downs, that's first downs. If you can get an impact from somebody that isn't one of the 11, then why wouldn't you plea for that?
Sure. Well, and what he's talking about is communication and Penn State being able to, audible at the line. If Ohio State gives them a look they're not expecting, be able to check into something else. If they can't hear, that makes that communication a lot more difficult. And the other place you'll see that is delays of game, false starts, any of that stuff. Anytime the crowd can get you 5 extra yards, you get that Penn State offense behind the sticks, make them a little more one-dimensional. That does have the impact, the potential to, change the outcome of the game if they can do that, and if Jim Harbaugh doesn't swoop in from somewhere to complain about and enforce the Big Ten's worst ever rule.
I don't know how many people even remember that being a thing, but I still have this in my mind of Jim Harbaugh under center and then just looking back at the ref being like, I can't hear, they can't hear me, nobody can hear me. And then you throw the flag on the Ohio State crowd for being too loud, and that was actually a rule back then.
The 1980s were a wild, wild time.
We had awesome TV shows.
We did.
But some of the football rules, here's another one. You couldn't advance a fumble if it was fumbled past the line of scrimmage. The defense couldn't advance it.
Is that true?
That is true.
I don't remember that one.
That is true. Look it up. You could only advance it if it was behind the line of scrimmage.
That's not as dumb as your crowd is too loud, 5 yards.
Well, no, nothing is as dumb as that. That's ridiculous. This is the best defense, probably the best offense Ohio State will face this year, would you say? So far?
So far, yes. We can have a conversation about which of the next 2 games is probably more of a challenge, but so far, yes, this is the best assemblage of talent, best overall probably team that Ohio State has faced this year.
Offensively, I think this team presents more of a challenge for Ohio State than Michigan does. But again, there's more than just offense and defense and special teams when Michigan gets involved, when it becomes the Michigan game, because then it's offense, defense, special teams, and fate or whatever that fifth dimension is. Michigan's defense is playing better, but I still, where are all of these tough offenses that Michigan is building this comeback off of? And they're not facing really anybody to this point to get them here. And we'll talk about this in our Patreon bonus show coming up later in the week. But I don't want to say this Michigan resurgence is built on a house of lies. Perhaps on an apartment of half truths.
Mm-hmm. That's I mean, some sort of domicile of less than full forthrightness.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Michigan. Neither Michigan nor Penn State is going to come in remotely close to like an even money opponent. Penn State has vulnerabilities. Penn State is top to bottom probably a little bit of a more talented team than Michigan is, but Penn State has some vulnerabilities too. I mean, you look at does KJ Hamler play this week? And James Franklin at his Tuesday press conference sort of demurred as to whether he would or not. It was just kind of like, yeah, we're hoping to have him back, but that's out of my hands. So that, in case you missed it, Hamler kind of got dropped on his head basically last week and is certainly, I don't think they've actually said the word concussion, but if he had a concussion, that's sure what it would have looked like. And if he was in concussion protocol, that's sure what it would sound like if James Franklin was talking about it. So if they don't have him back, that takes their big deep threat away. Mm. They're expecting to have Noah Cain back this week. Franklin said that they could have had Cain play last week if they needed to. But the longer they could hold him out, the closer to 100% he'd be. He's their big running back. He was someone that Ohio State had looked at one point in recruiting. They've got Sean Clifford, who's a decent. I mean, he's not what you would consider a dual threat quarterback, but he's pretty mobile.
But yeah, he's not unlike Shea Patterson and a step below Trace McSorley, but can run the ball and pick up first downs fine enough. I don't know that he's going to be carrying it more than 15 times out of just desperation, but he's not the guy that you would design a whole bunch of running plays for, but you have to still pay attention to him.
Right. He's not going to pick up a 60-yard touchdown like Justin Fields might, right, but he could pick up a bunch of, 3rd and 6
right,
scramble for 8-yard kind of plays. Like that's where it seems like he could be a game changer.
An annoyance.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah, like, it's third down and everyone thinks Ohio State's about to get off the field and he just kind of squirts through. I mean, you saw Johnny Langan from Rutgers do it last week.
Exactly.
And he's no great shakes, but, again,
in your opinion,
no Chase Young on that defense changes what the other team does. I mean, that was something that Hafley talked about today. Without Chase Young on the field, you saw opponents running longer pass routes because you knew, hey, we've talked about the clock being sped up in the quarterback's head if Young's out there. If he's not out there, hey, maybe get an extra second. Opponents sending out running backs into pass patterns, tight ends into pass patterns that they might have had to help, keep in the backfield to help pick up Young, if he was out on the field. So now Chase Young's back out on the field. Now maybe that changes things again a little bit because Penn State's offensive line it's okay, but it is certainly not a strength of that team.
Right. And you go back to when Chase Young is out of that first game against Maryland. Maryland is thinking, okay, we can do some more things, and then they get sacked like 7 times.
Yeah.
So, you think you can,
mm-hmm,
and you can go ahead and try it, and you'll see what happens.
You can do more things as long as some of those things are get sacked a lot.
You can do that a whole bunch. The Penn State defense has gotten torched through the air a little bit in the last couple weeks. I think they're giving up about 350 yards passing per game. When you look what Tanner Morgan did against them for Minnesota, and then this past week against Indiana, both guys go over 300 yards. Justin Fields went his first 300-yard game this past weekend. There's possibility of rain, so we don't exactly know what the weather will be like on Saturday. But this is a Penn State defense that is susceptible to an effective passing game, and Ohio State hasn't needed to show that passing game much at all this season, but has shown in the first half of the last couple of weeks what they are capable of. And Ryan Day said they weren't doing that these past weeks to prepare for Penn State. They were just doing it because they weren't going to throw in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this could be another game where Penn State gets roughed up in the secondary, especially if Justin Fields is out there for 4 quarters, and remember, he's thrown all of 13 passes in the fourth quarter this season.
Yeah, I mean, this is a week where the forecast is calling for like a high of about 40, and it's like a 50% chance of rain showers, which is like, that basically tells you nothing. Like, the forecast says it either will or won't rain.
Oh, well, note that.
That's one of those big if true weather forecasts. Like, that doesn't tell me anything. But the wind is not supposed to be real heavy. It's supposed to be like a, 8 to 10 mile an hour kind of wind. So you would think they'd be able to throw the ball if they need to. They've played in worse conditions than that this year and thrown the ball okay. So you would think that Penn State will probably just focus on stopping the run and just challenge Ohio State. If you can beat us through the air, beat us through the air kind of thing. If Penn State somehow decides like, hey, we've got to play a couple guys deep because we don't want to give up a bunch of big plays, that opens up that run game. If the thing that I think would most quickly decide this week's game in my head is if Ohio State can run the ball. Like, if you see J.K. Dobbins out there averaging 6-7 yards per carry in that first quarter, like, nope, that game is, I mean, barring, 4 turnovers in the second half or something, if Ohio State's running the ball 6-7 yards a carry, like, it's over. Yeah,
I did something, I think it's for PennLive.com or something today, where just asking me, blurb stuff, my thoughts on the game, and looking at Penn State giving up 75.9 yards rushing per game. To me, that's Ohio State will automatically double that. The only question is, will they triple it? Mm-hmm. And if they triple it, forget about it.
Oh yeah.
If they double it, then that's just an average game. Like that's a below average game for Ohio State, who has not been held under 200 yards rushing this season. But I think they can rush for 150 yards and still win the game because of Penn State's pass defense.
Well, yeah, you can rush for 150 yards and throw for 350, exactly. And then it's a monster day. Penn State's rush defense is interesting because normally when you look at an opposing team, you're looking at defensive ends with huge stats, and we've talked about like Robert Landers. Robert Landers against Rutgers did not get on the stat sheet, but tremendously impacted the game. Penn State has a defensive tackle who can get on the stat sheet. Robert Windsor. He's a guy from just a big old white guy from Wisconsin who he jumped out at me when I was watching the Iowa game. They played Iowa like a month ago at Iowa, and Iowa was just trying to run the ball, and Windsor just completely ate their lunch. He had 6 in that one game, 6 tackles, 2.5 for loss, and a sack and a half. Like, that's a monster day for a defensive tackle. Against Michigan, 4 tackles. Yeah. I mean, that's Minnesota, 4 tackles. Indiana, 4 tackles. He's got 30 tackles, 3.5 for loss, 2.5 sacks. I mean, that's a big guy statistically to have in the middle of that line. That's, Josh Myers a week or two ago talked about, the joy of opening up a hole and having the running back go breezing by you. That's a lot harder this week with Windsor in the middle of that line.
And Josh Myers was pretty much the lone offensive lineman who did not grade out as a champion. I don't know how much he'll be going against Windsor. And this one, Ohio State's guards, we know, are very, very good. Josh Myers is very, very good. That was probably just a bit of an off week for him, but still, it's something for him to build off of and know that, yeah, you can't just take things easy. Even though, as we've said before, the entire coaching staff took things easy by saying, well, you're not going to play this week. You're not going to play this week. You could play this week, but you're not going to. And then you still expect all of your players who are playing to feel like this is you need to be all out every single snap or else you might lose. And I think that's impossible.
Well, they can say the right things all week in the building, but, players aren't stupid.
Yeah.
We have talked consistently about how intelligent this Ohio State football team is. The downside of having an intelligent team is that they're not stupid and they're not easy to fool with, no, seriously, Rutgers is people. It's good. Try. It's hard. This week there's no selling involved. Everyone who has played in this series before knows, this is a tough physical series. This is a game that comes down to the very end, usually involves James Franklin blowing something in the last few minutes of the game because that's what he does.
Unlike any other.
Yes. But it is a 4-quarter game. And J.K. Dobbins after the Rutgers game, someone said, are you looking forward to playing a 4-quarter game. He's like, I don't know why you think we'd have to play 4-quarter games. So he has some confidence, but
Ryan Day was asked about those comments today, and he's like, well, I like JK being confident, but he knows this is going to be a 4-quarter game. Well, I don't know that he knows that.
Yeah.
I want to reiterate that.
Yeah, and I get the sense that at least one of the next 3 weeks is going to be a 4-quarter game. I don't know that this week is going to be a 4-quarter game.
That's kind of how I feel.
Like, it could be. And the Michigan game could very well be. And, if the right team catches Ohio State, like a 2017 Wisconsin-Ohio State kind of Big Ten championship game, that could be a 4-quarter game. But
in terms of 4-quarter game, like, I could see Justin Fields playing the entire game, but still not needing to throw the ball in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's a 17-point lead the entire quarter, or at the end, or 21 points. And as we know, Ryan Day, 28 points is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're up, say, 35-14 in the fourth quarter, I mean, I guess technically that's a 4-quarter game.
Yes. I mean, they will technically play 4 quarters. If that is how we're defining a 4-quarter game, then yes, this is going to be a 4-quarter game. But
if, in terms of a 4-quarter game being, let's call it within 10 points in the fourth quarter, what do you think is more likely, that all 3 of these are 4-quarter games, or none of them are 4-quarter games? Because for me, I say none.
None. Because I don't think that they're going to have all 3. I don't think there's a way it's possibly all 3. Because I think we've seen what this Ohio State team will do against Wisconsin. And, even if that game is closer, it's still a 2-3 touchdown game.
Yeah.
And, Michigan is certainly a threat.
But we've also seen that they don't take the foot off the gas against Michigan.
Right. Yeah. That would be, I mean, I think there's a better chance it's 10 points in the fourth quarter at Michigan than this week against Penn State.
So do I. And the being on the road is a huge thing for me. And I'm not sold on Penn State's offense or their defense.
What about their special teams?
Yeah, I haven't even gotten that far, really.
What about their game management? You sold on that?
In fact, I am not, Tom. I am not sold on their game management. And I kind of think that might be a factor, at least in the first half. I don't know if it'll need to be in the second half. Anything else from the guys today? Brandon Bowen, Robert Landers, this is going to be their final time playing in the horseshoe. And neither guy was really ready to talk about it, as, you could appreciate. I know that every year we try to get them to talk about it. The oldest SNL skits where Kevin Nealon would interview people and try to get them to cry, and then eventually have to start cutting onions in front of them or telling them a really sad story. And then the guest would start to cry, and he'd just look at the camera and smile with a sense of satisfaction. When you're asking these fifth-year guys and these fourth-year seniors about this is your last time in the shoe, that's pretty much what you're hoping for. You want them to get emotional and talk about what it means to them. And like Robert Landers was a West Virginia commit at one time, got a late offer to become a Buckeye. 5 years later, here he is. Brandon Bowen comes all the way from Utah. And his mom told him, you can't pass up this opportunity. Comes to Ohio State, gets to be a Buckeye. Meets his future wife here. They have a son now. The ordeal that he has gone through at Ohio State will shape his life forever now. And you could have just said that about his broken leg and coming back from all of those surgeries and to get back on the playing field. But, he found his family here. And so there's a lot going on in these 5 years that are more than just playing football for these guys.
The interesting thing with Bowen was he was asked about senior day, and he kind of went, oh yeah. Like it was, Ryan Day had talked about not wanting guys to focus on the emotions of the day and all that kind of stuff. Brandon Bowen seemed like genuinely taken aback, like, oh yeah, that's right. That's this week. And it wasn't, it didn't seem like an act. It was legitimately like, no.
Because he was answering the question, and the guy was like, no, regarding senior day. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Landers had a kind of similar reaction where he said, the emotions of the day, like, he's got a job to do. Like, the emotions of the day will hit him, he said, after the game, probably. That's when he thinks it'll happen, not before the game. Now, I remember being in the tunnel 2 years ago? Last year? When was Isaiah Prince's senior year? Was it last year?
Last year.
Last year. Being in the tunnel and Isaiah Prince crying in the tunnel, and it was a left tackle the year before that, plays for the Seahawks.
Jamarco Jones.
See, I told you, as soon as these guys are gone, they just fly out of my brain.
Bye.
Jamarco Jones being down there just visiting, he graduated the year before, being in the tunnel and like hugging Isaiah Prince in the tunnel. Really emotional day. But this is, this, you don't get the sense, and maybe this will hit them in the tunnel before the game, but right now, it comes across very clearly like they're not thinking about that. They're not worried about that. That's just all that, that's just, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, they're just focused on Penn State.
It goes back to the way Ryan Day has these guys focused. Although I might also suggest that both of these guys are fathers. And so maybe they've got they've got bigger things on their mind. And once you have this responsibility, you're like, I'm not going to cry in front of my family. I don't get enough sleep at night. And that was one of the things that Robert Landers was asked, do you wake up in the middle of the night, like thinking about football or the stress of being a Buckeye? It's like, now if I wake up in the middle of the night, it's because the baby's crying. And so maybe there's something to that where your perspective changes when the babies come. But I still expect both of those guys, knowing how much they love Ohio State and how much they have loved their time here. I mean, we've talked about these two guys a lot, and we're talking about a nose tackle and a right tackle. Mm-hmm. Who cares?
Right. Well, yeah, and for a lot of the time he was a right guard, then he was sort of a backup, and he sat out a year. I mean, those two guys, and I don't know. I don't think it's just the fatherhood thing, and I can relate to them a lot more than I can to a lot of the hashtag teens on the team. But they have, both of them for years have been first game of 2017 season. I remember talking to both of them after the game. Like, they're both just very thoughtful, entertaining guys, very mature. Yeah, just legitimately just good dudes. Yeah. And when we got the email from Jerry Emig with the interviews for today, it was like, oh, it's a Hafley day and a Brandon Bowen day and a Robert Landers day. Like, that's happy Tuesday to us all.
And the thing is, after the game, assuming Ohio State wins, when you talk to these people, the players after the game, you can't be like, so you're going to cry now? It's like, no, because now it's Michigan week.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You move right into Michigan week. All of this emotion, forget about it. Now the season is here, and you don't even care about what happened the 3 hours, 4 hours prior. Now it is Michigan week, and things are legit on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they will not have, I would guess, not a moment's, they normally talk about taking 24 hours to enjoy it. Like, I don't think that applies the week before the Michigan game.
They'll be watching film on the bus ride home.
Will they be playing It's Time for War in the locker room after the game?
That's what we'll find out, where it'll be interesting. We'll talk to the players once during Michigan week on a Tuesday, and I'm sure some of the questions will be the differences between Ryan Day and Urban Meyer for Michigan week, even though we'll only be talking to them on a Tuesday of Michigan week. Mm-hmm. But I would expect LL Cool J to still be around.
I would assume that Ryan Day has acquitted himself pretty consistently as an intelligent human being. I'm pretty sure Ryan Day can look at Urban Meyer's 7-0 record in the Michigan game and go, you know what's working? Yeah. Everything. You know what I should change? Nothing.
Exactly. Because if you change something, you may not be getting your own pint house. The 6-1 pint house?
Oh,
no.
No,
that does not work well. The 0-1 pint house? Oh, hell no. No.
Luke Fickle's restaurant down in Cincinnati, the 0-1 pint house.
That's not cool, man.
It's just an interim restaurant.
It's like one of the pop-up restaurants.
Yeah, a tent in a parking lot, yeah.
Food truck, if you will.
Wasn't expecting Luke Fickle to catch a stray on today's show. Here we are. Life comes at you fast.
Meeting right now, just ears ringing. What is going on? And then, yes, he does not deserve that. Anything else from today, Tom? Before we wrap up, I feel like we're not rushing through things. We've been talking for a good 35 minutes, but
I mean, unless you want to do a deep dive on Penn State's defense or whatever.
Well,
we can do that on Thursday.
Well, exactly. Yeah. That's what Thursday is going to be, is previewing it. I just wanted to go over what everybody else was having, what people were saying today, and I think we've pretty much.
Yeah, I think we've covered we've hit all the high points from today's interviews.
All right, and then as we said, we'll have another show Thursday or Friday following the Thursday interviews with Ryan Day, and then we'll do our previews, our game pick for this. I don't know, Tom. I'm feeling like maybe this is the week you pick against Ohio State. You are, after that 222 nothing prediction last week, I think you are going to overcorrect yourself so much and spin out of control that you might be going with the Nittany Lions this weekend.
I think I've also watched some football this year, so I don't think that's...
Then I'll throw that out. I did not know that. I was not aware of that.
I don't think I'm going to overcorrect my way all the way off the highway.
It's like Toots, the driving cat. All right, so that will do it as we reference Saturday Night Live from the 80s. Too many times.
Yes. Well, once. So, no, twice. That's
twice.
Too many times,
yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, that will do it for us today. Thank you all for listening. We would ask that you, if you could, go ahead and rate and review shows. Don't rate this particular show. Think of a better show and then rate that one. And then if you guys want to screenshot something, send it to us. Screenshot your review, send it to us. We can get something out to you as a thanks. Because we do appreciate your ratings and your reviews. And especially we appreciate you listening. And if you, the Patreon thing, we appreciate that as well.
Yep, we will have, we're doing 2 regular shows this week before the game, and we'll have 2, probably 1 to 2 Patreon bonus shows this week as well. So if you're interested in hearing those, patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly, you can sign up. It's like $5 a month. So you can sign up and get your bonus shows this week, get your bonus shows next week. I mean, if you are going over the river and through the woods next week to your grandmother's house for Thanksgiving, you can, you're really just buying silence. Just pop those earbuds in and drown those kids out with our dulcet tones. And I mean, really, you'd be a sucker not to do it.
You can't afford not to. It's either us or Baby Shark.
And if your wife and kids enjoy Ohio State football, we generally don't do any swears on this show, so they can listen to that too.
Exactly. In fact, we almost never do.
I can't remember doing one. I remember bleeping something about a year and a half ago.
Yep, but that's it.
Yep.
And I've learned my lesson. So we thank you all for listening. We will talk to you guys later.